Okay, welcome to Glenn's Drum Emporium. I'm kind of talking over a chainsaw next door. I'm doing some of the Christmas cheer snare drums for next year. Already got the drum sets done, but I've had a few snare drums left over, so I'm doing them now. So next year, I don't have to struggle getting them all done. I'll bag them all up and they'll look nice when I rip them out. So what happens is I get a lot of donations for Japanese drum sets, a lot of Japanese snares from the 60s and 70s. Brands are Cornet, Stewart, that kind of thing. That's these ones here. They have 6 lugs as opposed to 8, 10, or 12, making them very hard to tune. But with die-cast rims, they actually come to life. But they don't sell you the snare with die-cast rims. So one of the common problems is this is the snare release, common on many of them. And there's usually a lever up on top. That normally breaks, like right up here. You can see where the lever should be. And they always break off. You can see right in there, you can see the place where the lever should go in there and go in that hole right there. You can see it moving with my thumb here. So that's to turn the snares on and off. Basically lift the snare wires up into the skin or bring it down. So I've seen so many weird repair jobs on these. It's some of them scary. I'm working on this one right here. This is a 60s type snare. It's been sitting for ages because you can see it's got a cocoon in it of ants and bugs or something else. I know, it's kind of gross. And as you can see, it fell apart. Somebody tried to fix it. On here, you can see they stuck a nail in the hole to make a lever. So that's coming out, definitely. I'll show you what I do to fix it. And I've fixed many of these. I started collecting these type of lugs. These are, I believe, sonar lugs. They're kind of useless because they need a special key. Or I should say tension rod, not lug. This is a tension rod. It's got a slot in it, and the key to tighten it has a slot in it. Anyways, I've got tons of these. You can see thread on the end, but they look like a nice little lever handle. So what I do is I tap out that hole. If you don't know what a tap is, it's a thread cutter basically, and I try and get a half decent thread on it, a little bit bigger thread so it bites in hard when I tighten the that lug in. So I'm going to cut a new hole a bit bigger in that where the lever used to be, and it'll be threaded with the same thread pattern as this right here. And once you thread it in there, it goes tight. What I do too is I add a bit of glue just to hold the thread in there. And I'll show you what the finished product looks like. Now I'm trying to hold the camera and do all this without knocking stuff over, because I'm tight for space. So right here, you can see it. This is the lever. That's the same type of, and it looks like it should belong there. rather than having a stupid screw sticking out of there, or I've seen wires sticking out of there. And you can see it moves the mechanism, right? You're never going to find the originals. The reason these break off is because they were made cheaply. And that's the scoop. I fixed many of these. Now the other problem is they usually give you the tiniest of screws to hold this plate in. Well, normally, again, I make the hole bigger, I retap it, I put bigger screws in, it holds better. If I can grab one here, just hold on one sec. That's an original screw. Look at the size difference. And you end up always stripping these out. And they don't bite very much. With the bigger screws, it bites down on the strap. It works fantastic. It takes a few seconds. I suggest anybody fixing drums buy a tap and die set and a hand drill. Just retap the holes. These drums they have some collector value, but only specific people. Like, I'm a nut for them. I love all these Japanese drums, but for the most part, originally they didn't sound good. They sounded okay. They have their own sound, definitely. Most of them are mahogany. Some are with reinforcing rings, like this one, which are really bad because usually like one ply mahogany, sometimes two, with reinforcing rings. That's another one with reinforcing rings, but more. That's an 8-lug one. That's a 13-inch one, and it has a flat lever. Flat levers are even cheaper than the better ones. So just replacing it with these old Sonar tension rods adds a better look and a better function for them. Another trick that I've had people call me and ask, oh, do you have any snare straps? So I don't have any snare straps for the snare wire that hold underneath. And I'm kind of dazed by that, and I go, just take an old drum head, like a pinstripe, has 2-ply. What I normally do is I cut the first ply off, it's really thin. I cut it into strips, and let's see if I can grab the snare again. And I cut them into strips right here. I think they want like $7 for straps. You don't have to buy straps. Just cut them into strips that will fit where they grab into right here, because there's obviously only a certain width that'll fit. And just cut them to length. Real easy. Save yourself the money. Make it. Use old stuff. Same thing with snare bottom heads. Like, I take old used pinstripes, I cut the top layer off, clean it up with lacquer thinner to get the glue off. Works easy and looks great, and use it for the snare bottom, and it sounds great. It's a little bit obviously a used type head, but every one of these snares has that. So you may as well utilize your old drum heads for other functions. See, I've got another one cut here, ready to go to cut in strips. So that's the scoop for now. Oops, that's the scoop for now. Working on these, like I say, Japanese snare drums. Another thing, their lugs. A lot of the Japanese lugs, they put time and effort into these. They're thicker, they're well made for the most part, and they don't break. I've come across newer lugs, newer drums, that I can crush them in my hands. I had a batch there recently. I had to go through them all and squeeze them all, see which ones are going to break, and then scrap them. That's no good. So you see the spring in here. There's a little spring. It holds the tension rod nuts on either end, or the tension rods that hold the drum rod. Anyways, these springs like to vibrate every time you hit a drum. So you can imagine if you have like 6, 8, 10, 12 lugs on a snare with these all ringing. Most modern lugs don't have these anymore. But these old ones, all you do is take the spring out, take some cotton balls, just tear off a little piece, put it underneath, and the cotton ball will muffle that spring from singing. It will improve the sound of your snare drum. Make sure you put the cotton ball under the spring and not between the spring and the shell. If you were to put the cotton on top here, between the shell, you will actually start to mute the vibration of the shell and ruin the sound of your drum. So if you put it under the spring and then put the lug on the shell, it won't be an issue with the wood vibrating. You want the wood to vibrate. Another problem with these drums, this one's actually not too bad, is their bearing edges. Now I don't mind the rollover type bearing edges on snares. I actually kind of like the sound of it. It's a warmer sound. Some snares I've cut this to a 45 degree with my machine and just round it a little bit, but these old ones I kind of like them like this. And what I'll do is I'll sand them and smooth them out so there's no burrs, no sharp edges. I'll do that to both sides, and then I oil the entire shell where there's no wrap. Anything with wood exposed, I oil it with Old English oil, and it improves the sound. The more you oil the shell over the years, the better it sounds. I had one Japanese drum I had to take apart and just use the parts. The shell was beyond repair. It's got a soft spot. Looks like somebody tried to fix it. Can't do it. It's just too cheap and too weak. And it's one of the reinforcing types. Not worth the effort. I always leave these Japanese ones to the end because they're always a ton of work. Ton. But they look beautiful when they're done. Like this one looks really pretty. And I've got it tuned high. You want to get a good sound out of these drums, you got to tune them high, and that's tricky with a 6 lug snare because that's a lot of stress to tighten them without busting things, because they will break the shell, they'll break a lot of things. The lugs won't break, the lugs are great. So that's a modern day cheapy 6 lug one. It's ready to go, and that one needs a lot of work. The bearing edges are totally screwed up on that, and a friend of mine donated it, but he put an extra ply on the outside, and it's made the drum kind of fat. So when I say fat, it makes it hard for the drum skin to go on, and you want the skin loose where the rim is. You don't want it tight because again you start muffling the shells, stopping it from vibrating. So that one's going to take a lot of work. I'll have to see if I can get that outer layer off and fix the bearing edge up. I don't know, we'll see how that one goes. Anyways, it's getting noisy out in my garage. Sorry about my chin. I got hacked by a razor and I'm hemorrhaging, so there's not much blood left in me. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll post another video when this other snare is done, and maybe in a couple of the snares. Alright, thanks a lot folks. Okay, I'm going to show you what I do with these Japanese snare releases. Now, one thing is these rods get bent, so you try and straighten them. They have a little bit of a bend in them, but this one was drastically too much, so it works better now. And then once it's all drilled, I'll fill this up with grease, and it'll work and function great for years to come. So that's the one we're going to retap. That one right there. I've already done it, but I'm going to show you what I do. So we've got a national coarse bit right here. So you put it in that hole right there, and you just keep turning until the wonderful threads, see if I get this straight here, until this eats through that little metal piece right there. So I'm cutting new threads in there, and they're already through. Right here, already through. So that's as simple as that. And then I take this old Sonar, it might even be Premier, I forget. Sonar lug. It's the same thread pattern. You can match it up with your bit to kind of see what it is. See right there. And then it wonderfully screws in. And you just want it to go in a little bit past. So normally what I do, because you don't want to go in too far in because it gets into the mechanism. So what I do, if I can find it, what I do is take a center punch. And this is the wrong center punch, the other one's on the bench somewhere. This is for wood, but you get a metal one, it's got a point, and distort the threads right about there. So what I want to do is, not with this center punch, but the other one that has a point. And what it does is bends the grooves of the thread apart. And what happens when you do that is it'll only thread in so far, and then once it hits the bent threads, you can tighten it snug and it'll stay there. And then what I do is I dab some crazy glue on the threads. And then years down the road when somebody wants to work on it again, this has a slot in it. You can take a slotted screwdriver, take it out, it'll fight the glue, no problem. And you can give it a good cleaning and maintenance. So that's the scoop. Hopefully this is in focus. That's how you fix the Japanese snare release. Very, very common problem. I'm going to re-drill these bigger and tap them with a smaller tap bit than this, but bigger than the holes there. There's lots of meat around there to make a bigger hole on for holding the straps for the strainer. Okay. So even this is all green and painted from the previous owner, I'll get all that off, and the chrome looks great underneath. On this Japanese snare release, this one is retapped. I just finished doing the holes bigger. You can see the difference in size. Here's the original screw. Way better. Stronger. You get more bite for the snare strap, strainer strap. And these are junk. Always hated them. Always had them stripped. Either stripped there, or the tiny little threads strip there. These take a lot to strip those. I could probably go a little bit bigger and go with the drum key type, but this looks a little more nostalgic. Okay, this is the Japanese snare drum. It's always a mystery on who does their chrome lugs. They are a Slingerland clone, but it's always been a mystery what company makes these particular ones. Anyways, this is what we do. It's all cleaned, dry on the inside. We take a little bit of the cotton ball, stick it in there. Actually, I'll probably put these in first. These are the tension rod retainers, and they go inside. That's what tightens the rim down on the drum. So we put the retainers in, the one on each end, and they lock into place in 2 grooves on either side. Take the cotton ball, stick it in. Here's your spring. Put it in here. They snap into place. They're a bit hard to put in, but so that you have this effect. You don't want the cotton on this side against the shell, because it'll muffle the shell. It'll stop the shell from vibrating. What you want to do is stop the spring from vibrating. Then what I normally do, take a little bit of WD-40, just let it sit in the foam a bit, do a little bit on the ends here, and just a little bit, and that'll stop the any corrosion. And you can just let it sit upside down, whatever. Let it drain off overnight. The snare release mechanism, they don't come with any grease. I don't know why, but so what I normally do, let's see here, I saturate them in here because I just wash it in water and soap and water, and we're going to just let that ooze around. This will stop anything from getting corroded in there. You can move the mechanism too. What we're going to do later on is just fill this full of grease around all the mechanisms, so there's no friction whatsoever from metal on metal or rust that might have gotten in there over the years. So normally what I do with these is I wrap them up and just let the stuff ooze around, and then once it's totally dry, we'll grease them up, put them on the snare, and we're good. This is another one too. This is the one that was with full of green paint. Yeah, pretty amazing. Lacquer thinner took that off like nothing. So we'll do this one too. This one doesn't have a home, meaning a drum to go on, but I'm fixing it anyways, because if I need it for next year, I'll have it ready to go. So we also have the holes drilled on the retainers here for the snare strainer. You need those a bit bigger, so these just slide through and then they thread into the retap threads of the snare release. So that's it, folks, for this part of the show. Okay, these Japanese drums, most of them are mahogany. This one looks like a 3-ply. It might be 5-ply, real thin. Sometimes they go mahogany, like a gum, and then mahogany, a gum, and then mahogany on the inside. Still really thin. The bearing edges are usually rounded. They're usually not perfect. So I take this, which is a fiberglass sanding block. Used to use these in the body shop. Best thing for doing the bearing edges, just to level them out a bit. And you go this way on here and sand it like this. Not very much. And what that does is just flatten it out. You do both sides. Once I've done that, just to flatten out that a bit, I take it and then I kind of shave the edges a bit. All the way around I shave the edges, just on the side a bit, and then I do the same thing for the inside edge. What that does is help get it a little more pointed, but still rounded at the top. Then this here would be, I think, a 320 grit, and then I use a 180 just by hand lightly to knock it down and kind of make it uniform around this. So I do that to both sides, and they feel great, way better than they were originally, and the drum automatically is going to sound better. That's the problem with a lot of these old drums. I'll give you an example here. This one here, this one has bearing, what they call reinforcing rings, and the reinforcing rings are horrible on this. They're so out of, I can go like this, it's up down, up down, up down. I see staples actually in this one. I've never seen that before. Staples holding the reinforcing ring in. This looks like somebody's bad repair job. I do not believe that was Japanese work. So somebody's kind of hacked that one. But you can see the bearing edges are horrible here. Now I can make those perfect, but it's a lot of work. So I'm already doing a lot of work for these Christmas kits. So, and as you can see, this drum here is already wrecked. There's a big hole here. Someone doesn't know that this looks like these type of snare releases. This is an even cheaper one than the other ones that I've been working on and showed you in videos. This is the flat bar type. There's a big nut that threads on here, and it looks like whoever had this before just decided to tighten the nut until it carved through the wood, whereas you should have put a nice big washer there and would have probably saved the drum. But I mean, I could fix this shell. It's pretty strong and I may still do it, but this here has got lots of work yet to do. It's got to be recovered. Someone peel the cover off, and there's some imperfections here. So I don't know, but this one is pretty strong, whereas the one I didn't show this before, but another one that I had, the shell is non-fixable. So anyways, back to this one. So once the bearing edges are nice, I take this, which is Old English oil for wood. I'll move these because I don't want oil on that. So what I do is, now this drum's already been done, but I'll do it for the demonstration, just so you get an idea of what I do. So for the first part, I take this and saturate it as much as possible on the inside and just soak it into the wood. And don't be cheap on this stuff. So I'm doing this again. I usually do it 2 times. This is actually going to be a 3rd time, but the drum was really dry anyways. Like, you can tell the difference. This has been sitting for years, probably with no head on it, and the wood is all dry. And the problem with the wood to get dry, it starts to get powdery. And oiling the shell like this enhances the sound. I don't believe in painting. I don't believe in painting the insides of these old shells that are mahogany. It's just oil will do a nice job for them. So, and we'll do a little bit more here. I think that's, we're coming into the final here. Oops. Yeah, so there we go. So that one's done. Nice. Look at that. Looks rich. And it's going to improve the sound of this drum. You can tell the feel of the shell. If it's a thuddy shell or if it's got some brightness to it. So now, the bearing edges, I saturate those, and you got to watch because you might get some burrs, and if you have any big burrs you should sand them off. So what this does is it softens the wood and keeps it that way until you put a drum head on, and the drum head will actually flatten any of the tiny microscopic burrs. It will shape them down to a nice flat level. And we'll do this side also. I've already done this to the orange one that's basically the twin to this drum. They're basically same shell, same everything really. The orange one I think is in better shape. This finish has been in a bar and has yellowed. It's the problem with some of these finishes. Although they look beautiful, the smoking in the bars back in the day did not help them. So that's that. That shell is going to sound way better than it ever did when it come from the factory. Now, I've been using all these techniques that I've shown you in this video. I've been using them for decades. Oiling of the shells, I've been doing probably for 30 years. And I even do all my top of the line drums the same way. My Yamahas, which are the Yamaha recording kit that I play the most, I do all of them with this oil. Like I do it on the insides of the drums. If they've got a lacquer finish on the outside, you don't really have to, because the lacquer is protecting the wood. So you want to polish those nice. But anything with mahogany like this, it's great to do the oil on them. So that's it, kids, for this. And now the drum is going to go back together. We're going to put it back together. So we're about to put the stuff together. So kind of lay out what I have done, have to put on. The new screws, the new retap screws are in here. Also put new screws in the tailpiece. The old ones are useless. And I've touched a little bit of WD-40 on all the threads for all of the lug nuts. This is for the snare snare release. It's a different style. Anyways, so that will go in here. And wing nut on the other side. I'm just going to put everything in just finger tight right now. So lugs are all oiled. I've oiled the threads of the nuts that hold the lugs on. So we'll start putting them in. Okay, let's do the snare mechanism. As you can see, I've got the wonderful new arm on it. Not great, looks factory. So, like I say, it's in there good. And this is a bit tricky because this has a groove in it. And the groove has to fit in this keyhole like that, so it moves this piece in and out. And then we have a wonderful spring that goes in there, and then we have a washer, and I want to put just a little bit on the threads and a little bit on that washer. Before I start threading it in. Before I even do that, we're going to tighten the grommet. This is that grommet right here. And like I say, you don't have to tighten it like that other snare where the guy went all the way through the shell with it. You definitely don't want that. Right there is a nice snug feel. And we are ready for the snare. Now this threads in, so you've got a little bit of a weight while I throw this in here. And hopefully I didn't forget anything. I'm notorious for forgetting some things. I'll dry it up a little bit here. Like I say, and that keyhole's got to go in the slot right like that. It's kind of a cool thing about this. type of holder, or snare release I mean. And let's get this bracket aimed up for the holes on the side. Got a little ways to go yet. Okay, it might be close there, and we'll see if we can get those fingers started. The snare release. I don't know if that's showing up on camera. I'm not used to working on a camera doing this, so side. That's good. And that's good. And we'll bring this in. It seems to be functioning perfectly. You can see the mechanism move up and down. This knob adds tension, pulls the strainer. This is to turn the strainer on and off. As you can see, it goes up and down. I have to see if I have any strainers left. I don't think I have any left. Okay, so that's one half of the snare mechanism. And I've got the butt end of the snare mechanism, and we'll put the screws through one side and just get them set with the lock washer. And there, that's one. These are all oiled up also. Probably a little too much. And the second one. There we go. And these old snares have square nuts. I don't know if you see that. Old fashioned. But I like the nostalgic part, so I kind of keep them. So we'll snug this up. Snug this other one up. Now we just have the muffle. I had to change the muffle. The other one was pretty bad. It looked like it was attacked by mice and rust. So I decided to change that. And I like to put a couple of washers on these, on the mechanism. Just because I had issues with these before with binding on the finish. So these are a pain in the ass to put on. So, and a drop screwdriver. So you have to bear with me on these. Try and get it around this way here. And you gotta get the lock washer on and the washer, or the nut. it actually went fairly easy. Usually that's a pain. It's a good thing it happened on camera. So it probably won't happen again. Okay, and I just want to make sure these holes are as it seems to be. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, surprising. Okay, we'll give that a little snug up. The old screwdriver. Use this. This has to be a little bit more snug because it's something that vibrates and might come loose at some point. Okay. And we're going to put a little bit of Vaseline on the end of this, on the threads. And there are 2 washers here. And I'm going to put a little bit on one side, just so we have a little lubricant on the shell that goes in. It's a bit tricky here. Okay, one last thing is the bracket. Instead of a bracket, they add these round solid pieces. I like these better. Problem is the threads are all different on these, so this may not work. I just got to aim it up and see across the skin area if this touches, which it does. You don't really want a lot, but you want to be able to shut it off, which means go below the rim or below the skin, which it does. And I think it doesn't have enough tension, so I'm going to bend it downwards. So I'm going to bend it down like that, create just a bit more pull. That way there's no rattles. It keeps it pretty tight. Right there, it's got nice tension, and then parts won't come flying off. So this is almost the same that was on there. I just don't like these brackets, not to mention they strip. But this one's still good, but I'll use it on something else. But there we go. This snare is ready for the skinning and the rims. Unfortunately, I have to search for skins. I might have a top, but I don't have a bottom. So that's it for now. Okay. I have a new head for it. New drum skin, I guess. For those that aren't drummers, we call them heads, though. A lot of these Japanese drums have different threads for the tension rods and the tension rod nut that's inside the lug. You'll see a national fine, a coarse, and it gets quite annoying. Nothing is universal with Japanese drums. I'm not sure why. It's something I learned along the way, that every one of these Japanese drums is different for threads. There's this one and the orange one are the same, and none of the other ones are the same threads as these. And everybody seems to lose these little washers, and then I see people using lock washers on them, and I almost burst out laughing because the whole point of a lock washer is for it not to come off. So meanwhile it's carving into the rim, but what it's meant to do is give a little free sliding motion here when you're tightening it, so you don't have complete friction on the rims. And I always put Vaseline on the threads just to get maximum tightness out of these Japanese snares. Well, I do it with all my drums, to be honest. It's a little bit messy, but it is the golden rule. And we always carry a drum key. We push down in the center, just kind of get some of the wrinkles out. This is a cheap skin, but it's brand new, so the snare will probably be happy to have one, because it's probably not had a couple of skins on it in decades. Most of these drums I get are all apart or broken or missing things. So this drum will be happy again. And the skin will probably break, because a lot of these cheap skins, the glue lets go in the rim, the outer ring, because I like to have my snare fairly tight, and the Japanese drums sound better tight. I find with the 6 lug they sound like water balloons if you leave them too loose. So what I'm doing is getting the tension out before I even start to tune it, if the skin can even be tuned. I'm snugging up everything right now, and now I'm just trying to get the wrinkles out, going back and forth, opposites like this. This one's still got wrinkles here. A little bit more here, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there. Okay, and I'll give it get it off the bearing edge. It's way out of tune, and it's pretty loose. So, problem with a brand new skin, it's going to take a while to break it in, but for now, I just want to get it rough. The whole idea of you want to get the pitches the same around the lugs. You can do that at different tensions. And bring the pitch of the drum up. Most people, or most drummers I know, don't know how to tune a drum. I don't know why, but it's not that hard. My guitar player made a joke the other night that a lot of drummers he's played with, all the drums sound the same. So a drum fill sounds like it's all on one drum. Now, in all fairness, 6 lug snares with regular hoops very hard to tune. We're going to start there, and then I'm going to get the bottom head on just so we have some counter tension on the rim or on the shell, because if you want to break a shell, crank it on one side and you'll almost guarantee to do something. Okay, so I don't have any bottom snare heads left. So I'm going to show you a little trick I've been using. I mentioned it in an early part of the video. It's a pinstripe head. 2 Mylar sheets glued together. So what we're going to do is cut through the first layer. I just put a little slice there, and then I extend this quite a bit. Actually, I'll put the lock on. And bring it towards the edge, bring the cut to the edge, and then slowly and carefully cut that first ply off. Once in a blue moon I stab the bottom layer and wreck the whole skin, but for the most part worn heads usually separate pretty easy. And then you can use the strips from this to make your snare release, your strainer release holder. So now this is thin enough to be an ambassador snare bottom. So what I do is there's still an edge here. So I flatten it down. Now this is a bit dangerous, so hopefully I don't sever a finger while doing this. So I try and get it as close to flat bottom to get the rest of that skin off, to avoid getting any buzz noises when you're hitting the snare. And then once you do this, you won't have any issues. Just got to be careful you don't cut your fingers or cut through the head. Like I say, it's easy to cut through the head if you're not careful. And I just take my time making sure that inner skin is flat, so I can cut the rest of the old one off. This skin and drum were given to me, I think, last year on a Japanese drum that it's going to require a lot of work. But I will give it a shot. I was going to do it this year. That's still possible, but to be honest, I'm burnt out after doing all these kits. I've even done one kit for myself. I recovered one of my old workhorse drum set. It was getting beat up. So, and there we go. Bottom head for snare. There's a little bit of glue. That's from the 2 plies pinstripe. They put a little bit of glue in the outer edge. The best chemical to get that glue off almost instantaneously is good old-fashioned lacquer thinner. Be careful with this stuff. It is strong. I've been working with this for all my life because I used to airbrush in lacquers. And we just go around the edge as quickly as we can, and that will take all the glue that held the plies together. It won't affect the glue holding the skin in the, or the mylar in the aluminum ring itself. So you're probably asking, why do I go through all this? I said, I don't really know. I just like doing it, I guess. I find it relaxing. All little tricks I've learned in my 40-something years of being a drummer. Now we'll clean the inside because obviously it's full of dirt. It's a wonderful grime, and like I said before, I like to have the inside at the bearing edge especially slippery. And the Pledge seems to do a nice job of that. I used to use ski wax, just a bit on the edge. All different tricks, just to make the head slide on the bearing edge of the shell more. Okay. This drum will have to have a little redusting. Okay, so right there, we put it on, and look at that. Fits. We have a bottom head, and we have to, you can notice it has holes in it. That's for the strap for the snare strands to go through. So there we go. Now I have to find lugs that fit, or tension rods that fit. Be right back. Okay, so I have literally tons of these tension rods, but for this snare I only had 8 I found. I have 2 spares. And you can see the thread difference. This is the one I need. Very fine thread, small diameter. And there are so many variables on these drums, and drums in general. Nowadays they're more standard, but back then in the 60s and 70s, this used to drive me nuts. You could basically go crazy trying to find some of these fine ones, because you don't see them anymore. So what you end up having to do is change out the tension rod block, or what they call the receiver nut for the tension rod, changing them to modern day ones. And they're not always the perfect fit in there either, but they get you by. Anyways, the skin is on there. Kind of added it a bit out. That's the pinstripe, cut it down to 1 ply. I'm putting this strainer on. It's oh no, I can't. This is a rope type. This is old school. Okay, so I'm stuck. I don't think I have another one. Oh well, I have to pause. Okay, we cut our new strips for the snare strainer. I cut it out of an old skin. Saves on having to spend $7 for a new one. This is the only strainer I have. A couple of the wires are bent, and it probably won't work very well, but at least we'll have a rough test of this drum. So I'm going to at least give it a shot. I'm putting it in the snare butt. That's what they call it, snare butt. And you want to kind of just come off the edge, maybe 1/4 of an inch. And these new screws I put in should tighten nicely. Yeah, they're definitely tight, nice, way better than the originals. And as you can see how that goes. Hopefully the light's good down here. I moved in from the garage because it's getting a little cool out. had to come in and look for a snare strainer because the one out in the garage that I had left was an old vintage rope type, and they wouldn't work with this very well. So I just got to get this into the snare. Yeah, those snares are pretty bad. Problem with stretch snares like that, they never really tighten up, and they just end up rattling horribly. So I'll have to check through my box of stuff. I probably have more, but let's see if we can stretch it out. No, maybe. I think we got lucky. So there we go. Not a lot of talking in this. Missing one strand here, but that's common. They break. It's a little bit loose, that middle one. It's got a little bit of a bend in it. So, probably a little bit too choked. We can adjust that just a little bit. The drum muffle works. Yeah, that works. If I can let that go just a bit. I think with a better snare on there it would be much better. Got a nice warm sound. I like it. So that is the scoop, folks. This drum is pretty much done. I will probably put a better snare strainer underneath. But this snare is ready for action. There's the handle I made one more time. And the cool thing about these is like sometimes vibration makes them ricochet off. It's got a little slot in it, and you can just put a rubber band down to this lug. That's what a lot of guys used to do back in the day. Even on the expensive drums that had that similar type of mechanism. But works great. The drum itself sounds great. Actually awesome. The snare we just got to work on. So anyways, that's the second snare. You can call them a cornet snare or what do you call it? Japanese stencil kit with excellent lugs on it. The lugs are, I really like the lugs on these. I'm just trimming the little hairs on here for the tags or the straps being a little too long. There we go. Another drum done. I'd like to find a better top hoop for this. This one's a little bit pitted, but so. And anyways, hope you enjoyed the videos. I know they're long and tedious. I'm going to try and kind of condense them down a little bit and make a full video. Anyways, thanks for watching. We'll move on to a couple other snares, and that'll be it for this year. Thanks for watching.